Metroid Zero Mission was a remake of the original Metroid, released in 2004 for the Game Boy Advance. It was built off the successes and shortcomings of Metroid Fusion and Super Metroid. Specifically, the design was made to be extremely non-linear, more so than Super Metroid, but with the optional ability to be directed to your next destination by Chozo statues, to assist new players or people that weren't too interested in the desolate and often isolated atmosphere of Super Metroid. This was the last traditional Metroid game for over 10 years. Let's see what makes it such a worthy send-off. The game starts with Samus introducing it as her first ever mission, or her Zero mission. Then, we're off. That's it, just go do stuff. The title screen also has some information for why she's here. We need to destroy every Metroid on the planet Zebes and kill the biomechanical supercomputer Mother Brain, who's planning on using the Metroids to take over the galaxy alongside her band of space pirates. Anyways, most of that is optional to see because it's not nearly as important as being dumped into the game and just going. Metroid Zero Mission is extremely non-linear, so after the first room, literally everything can be done in a bunch of different ways depending on how you want to explore Zebes. Around Zebes, you'll collect upgrades that allow you to either maneuver around the map easier or get through obstacles you'll encounter, such as the Morph Ball, which allows you to morph into a sphere and move through small crevices. You'll also find missiles, which deal way more damage than your beam and allow you to open red doors. Your beam at this point is also rather pathetic. It deals barely any damage and has an effective range of roughly 1 meter. However, there are upgrades for it around Zebes, such as the Long Beam for increased range, the Charge Beam for increased damage output, and the Wave Beam for more damage and phasing through solid objects, and the Plasma Beam for dealing even more damage and boring through enemies. Your movement tech is also rather diverse, allowing for a lot of diverse areas and structuring of those areas that we'll see later on in the game. Your base movement is rather simple. You can run, jump, and wall jump. Then you can use the Morph Ball to reach into small crevices. After getting the Morph Ball, you can get bombs. Bombs can reveal breakable blocks in the environment. They're very important for discovering secrets and even progression at times. There's an old meme that says if you're stuck in a Metroid game, your best bet is to bomb every surface you can find. This is pretty accurate, but the surfaces in Zero Mission that you need to bomb are rather easy to identify if you have a keen eye. Bombs also propel you upward, and with enough finesse, you can get into lots of interesting places with them. Eventually, you'll also get power bombs, which are basically bombs turned into screen nukes. The primary purpose of such a devastating weapon is finding breakable blocks just like regular bombs, but easier. Additionally, you'll find the power grip, which allows you to grab ledges in case you don't quite make a jump. This makes platforming a lot more forgiving and allows you to reposition yourself even better. The speed booster charges your speed up as you run, then you start breaking the sound barrier and destroying everything in your path. You can also press down and store what's called a Shine Spark, which launches you through the air in any direction. There's also the high jump boots, which make you jump higher. These are really useless because wall jumping and bomb jumping exist. However, they do allow you to jump in Morph Ball, which is also mostly useless due to bomb jumping existing. However, when combined with the speed booster, you can do a Ball Spark. Ball Sparking is useful in a couple rooms for getting across without hitting collision. However, it's mainly there for getting early super missiles. The Screw Attack turns your somersault into pure death, turning everything in your path into a clean mulch. There's also the Varia Suit, which increases defenses and makes you immune to heat. There are 3 unknown items as well. They don't do much at all, but they let you break some blocks required to complete the areas they're in. Their actual function gets unlocked much later on. Some of the upgrades you get might seem useless or optional at best, and that can bring the argument of why is this even a thing if I don't need to use it at all? Like, why would I get high jump boots if I can wall jump and bomb jump? Well, what if you don't want to bomb jump? What if you don't like bomb jumping or even know how it works? Having optional upgrades like this can help new players out as they familiarize themselves with deeper techniques like wall jumping. These upgrades are also made in ways that provide potential bonuses for including them in your route. For example, you could skip high jump boots, or you could route it in to get early super missiles and skip a boss fight. You could also do a route that fights Ridley before Kraid, and you could route in only going to Norfair once by skipping Varia Suit entirely and therefore skipping the Wave Beam too. Such a route can be fast, but your beam is dealing peanuts for damage, so you have to rely on missiles for damage, and you're extremely frail. There are so many routes you can take in a playthrough that figuring out where you want to go and what you want to do sort of becomes its own metagame, and I think that greatly adds to the replay value. Metroid Zero Mission is an extremely open game. Progression is pretty much open to whatever and whenever. However, you still have some very real destinations that you have to get to, and some stipulations along the way. Your first goal is to find the entrance of Tourian to kill Mother Brain. However, before that, you have to kill Ridley and Kraid in their respective lairs. To do that, you'll have to explore pretty much the entire planet of Zebes to find the right power-ups to get to their lairs and kill them. You start in Brinstar, which branches out to the entrances of Kraid's lair, Norfair, and Tourian. In there, you'll find the bulk of your starting items. Some of them, like the Long Beam, Charge Beam, and later on the Varia suit, are very possible to skip. The Charge Beam is obtained by fighting this gargantuan centipede. You have about 4 chances to shoot it in its eye with a missile before it will burrow. It also fires off spines that you can shoot to potentially regain your missiles if you miss. The fight itself is rather forgiving, especially since you can refight it later if it burrows, but it requires precision and is honestly somewhat of a difficulty spike. The centipede itself will appear and reappear only in areas you're going to be heading anyways, and there's always a missile tank directly before it to ensure that you have enough missiles to feasibly kill it beforehand. Brinstar leads to 2 locations at this point of the game: Kraid's lair and Norfair. Kraid's lair is defined by its start, which contains a large central shaft which branches off into several other rooms which either contain ways of progression or items. It also has acid as a central part of a lot of its rooms as a punishment for falling and failing a platforming challenge. There are also ceiling rails that will push you forward, but to operate them you have to kill a gigantic worm. This fight is about timing, when it's going to attack you, making sure the ceiling rail is available for you, and using it to get across. Also, all of its attacks do practically nothing if you just get the Varia suit beforehand, because they rely on pulling you into the acid to deal most of their damage. The rest of Kraid's lair is a large circuit that reaches all the way around the map, and to Kraid himself. The rooms here are a mixture of long corridors with unique geometry and enemy placement, and tall rooms that just go straight up and down. If you know what you're doing, a lot of it can be routed around. That's really the best part of Metroid games. Depending on how you route your playthroughs, the experience can be entirely different, and it can feel like there's a limitless amount of ways to go through a static map, because while the map itself can't change, your means of exploring it definitely can. Kraid's fight is all about precise aiming, timing, and platforming. You have to make sure you can platform your way up to Kraid's mouth while it's open from a missile shot, then fire some follow-up shots into it. However, the platforms you have will be destroyed over the course of the fight, and you'll have to stand on these projectiles Kraid fires before they disappear. You can also just sort of rush him if you really know what you're doing. After killing Kraid, you get the speed booster, which opens up a lot of opportunities, including exploring Norfair normally, getting early super missiles, and just generally stunting around like a show-off. Norfair also has this cooled, hellish atmosphere to it. It's a really calm place for having magma anywhere. The background music is soothing and methodical. So are the movements of several enemies here. A lot of them, like these fire critters and squids, move gracefully and almost with the music. This version of Norfair is probably one of the best locales I've ever seen at presenting itself at being very alien and otherworldly. It genuinely feels like a whole other world, so far separated from Earth and everything we know about it. The map design is really explorative too. There are several cave-like systems that wrap around the place, and while they might not all be interconnected, they cover every inch of the map. The rooms themselves each have their own unique challenge, which can include platforming, ice beam usage, or just fighting enemies. There's also a cavernous segment in Norfair that's infested with grubs and vines. In it, you can see things such as the grub's entire metamorphic cycle, and how the vines interact with them, by subsisting parasitically off of them. The way the grubs and vines interact with the world around them and with each other is just another part of what makes Zebes feel very much like a real planet. At the bottom of Norfair is a fight against a grub that's being suspended in the air by vines. It'll occasionally spew spores in every which way, and there's also a ripper flying around the place for you to freeze and use as a platform. Or you could just wall jump, that works too. This fight is entirely about platforming and aerial maneuvering, specifically by wall jumping or managing the Ripper as an ice beam platform. After destroying the vines, the grub falls to the ground. If you come back here after entering Lower Norfair, it'll have burrowed into another area. This is where you fight the Hornet, which is what the grub metamorphosed into after burrowing. This fight is really simple. You just run around and shoot the Hornet. It's about knowing how to position yourself so you don't get shot, and knowing when you're going fast enough to be able to hit the Hornet with a missile. Also, there's some positioning in making sure that you don't get hit when it first comes down to you. Although, if you have enough health, you can just kind of thug it out. Thug it out. Now, onto Lower Norfair. Lower Norfair is actually a really uniquely designed area for a Metroid game. I used to think it was somewhat of a gauntlet, a series of difficult fights going back to back, similar to a Zelda dungeon. The soundtrack especially sounds like something you'd hear in an NES Zelda dungeon. However, with some experimenting and replays, I found that it's way more than that. Just about every hard fight in this area can be avoided if you explore the map right. Combine that with the unique ways they hide items, and suddenly Lower Norfair is either about directly brawling with the uniquely difficult enemy compositions in each room, or figuring out how to navigate around them, all depending on how you want to approach it. To get out of Ridley's lair, you'll need to get an unknown item, which just so happens to be right behind Ridley's room. One of my favorite things about Lower Norfair is the fact that when you enter Ridley's room, it's empty, because when you first enter Lower Norfair, you see that he's just arriving to the planet. However, when you return with the unknown item to leave, he ambushes you. This starts the boss fight against Ridley, which is, well, it's pretty easy. What you need to do is rush him down with super missiles, then shoot him. The fight is actually a lot harder if you fight Ridley before Kraid, or are playing hard mode, because in hard mode you actually have to survive the following onslaught of attacks after initially rushing him down. The main thing that can make this fight trivial or not is super missiles. If you have at least 4 super missiles, you can one-cycle him. If you don't, you'll have to go on the defensive, recover some of your lost firepower, and then wait for another chance to rush him. Overall, this fight has the potential to be an insane test of endurance and extremely concise execution, or a test of preparation by just gathering as many super missiles as possible. However, this test of preparation doesn't really exist in the average normal mode playthrough, because the average player will already have enough super missiles and energy tanks to turn this fight into a joke. With Kraid and Ridley dead, the entrance to Tourian opens. Entering Tourian plays a cutscene of Metroids feasting on a dead space pirate. It sets the mood as tense and intimate. You're not running through this all guns ablaze like usual. You'll be on edge waiting for the Metroids to appear from the background. The Metroids themselves are also extremely dangerous. If they come into contact with you, they'll latch onto you and immediately start draining your health unless you spam bombs to get them off. The Metroids, music, opening cutscene, and lighting make you feel vulnerable and out in the open, because you're never going to be in a position where a Metroid appears and you'll have cover from it. Also, I'd like to mention that Samus's power suit is in heavy contrast to the lighting of Tourian. It makes her pop out, which makes you focus on her more, and makes you feel like you're more starkly in the open than in other areas like Brinstar, where you kind of blend in as part of the aesthetic. To kill a Metroid, you have to freeze it with the Ice Beam, then hit it with 5 missiles while it's frozen. Metroids also have a much lower freeze time than regular enemies, which can make it particularly stressful to have to juggle between multiple of them while trying to hit one or more with missiles. There are also Rinkas, which only serve to grind for items really, but they're used much more dangerously in the Mother Brain fight. The Mother Brain fight starts off with you having to destroy several regenerating walls with missiles, while turrets and Rinkas harass you. The whole point of this fight is to balance yourself on the platforms while dodging Rinkas and turrets, along with firing at the regenerating walls with enough burst damage to break them before they regenerate. After destroying any wall, you can also leave the room, grind for super missiles or whatever, and come back. This is pretty much mandatory for lower percent runs. After breaking several regenerative walls, Samus finally comes face to face with Mother Brain. This fight is a test of endurance, a severe one. You have to balance shooting down the glass protecting Mother Brain, along with paying attention to where the turrets are aiming, where the projectiles are, and where the Rinkas are. Screw Attack can help severely with clearing out Rinkas, so can the Ice Beam. As for the turrets, there's not really much. You're just gonna have to platform around them. Mother Brain will start attacking when you break her glass container too. She starts by firing energy waves that can knock you around, or even worse, into the turrets. You have to shoot her in the eye with 5 missiles or 1 super missile to cycle her, or alternatively 4 missiles and 1 super missile if you absolutely hate her. However, if you're knocked any lower than the platform you're standing on, she closes her eye and restarts the cycle. This entire fight tests your platforming abilities and reaction speed to their absolute max. You genuinely have to fight for your life here, but don't think you're done when she's dead. There's a self-destruct timer rigged up to her that goes off, blowing up all of Tourian with you in it if you can't get Samus out in time. So, after getting back to the ship, Samus calms down a bit, takes off her suit, and all's well that ends well, right? Well, it turns out that Ridley's Legion don't take too kindly to the space pirate leader being straight up murdered, along with all their generals. And her lab of galaxy-ending superweapons being destroyed too. So they give chase and end up shooting Samus' ship down, forcing a crash landing back to Zebes, while Samus still has her power suit off. So Samus is left powerless, suitless, and quite nice on the eyes. Our goal at this point is to sneak into Ridley's ship and do something. Well, actually hijacking one of those patrol ships that shot us down and leaving would be pretty nice. This segment is a game of stealth. You have to sneak about Ridley's ship mostly undetected by the space pirates. If one sees you, he'll give chase until you either find a hiding spot they won't find you in, or they don't see you for long enough, which can be done by a godlike timing with your stun pistol or godlike maneuvering. This stretch of the game is mostly about your intuition in navigating spaces, and your maneuverability. You have to be very good to avoid the spotlights and space pirates around the place, let alone outrun them in a chase. It starts out in Ridley's ship, but eventually you enter Chozodia, the ancient land the natives of Zebes inhabited. Many doors get blocked off during the chases, meaning you'll have to stay undetected at key moments, contributing to the pressure of staying incognito. What contributes even more to the pressure, though, is that space pirates have extreme mobility during chases, which pushes you into insane performances. But the main reason you want to stay away from them is the insane amount of damage they can do within a single hit, let alone the multiple they can inflict in mere seconds. If you get caught in the wrong position, you're straight up dead. To compensate for the insane amounts of damage you'll be taking, save rooms here fully heal you and restore your ammo. This section is amazing. There are so many things you can do here, and the way each part is structured, you can play this several times over and have completely different experiences every time. For example, I had runs going where I was literally never detected, complete stealth, but I've had a fair amount of runs devolve into a chase at the end where it's me and the space pirates barreling through Ridley's ship into Chozodia, and eventually into the final room of the stealth sequence. This is the God of War. It's a very weird fight. You have to charge up a full stun shot and fire it when the orb it's carrying has the emblem of whatever that is instead of a mirror of you. If you whiff and hit yourself, well, you shoot yourself. You have to hit 4 shots, and the God of War moves faster and is able to attack more effectively every time he's hit, culminating in coating the floor and walls in lightning with a single attack. This fight can either be a struggle, or you can put him down within a matter of seconds, all depending on how careful you are with your positioning while trying to dodge its attacks. Although there are some points where the position you have to get into dodge is antithetical to where the God of War will be when he exposes its emblem, which can contribute to inconsistency. This means that not every fight is going to be the same, and sometimes you won't be able to rush him down as fast as you want, completely because of the game's fault. Anyways, after finishing the fight, Samus is gifted her fully powered power suit, which includes all the unknown upgrades from before. Those being the Plasma Beam, Space Jump, and Gravity Suit. The Chozodia soundtrack is replaced with a bit more of a rock-ish remix of the Brinstar theme, which transforms its meaning from wonder and exploration in an alien world to you having total control over more or less everything and being able to do pretty much whatever you want, because nothing in this world can really stop you anymore. You can go do it all. So go ahead and 100% the game. It only takes a few hours and is honestly extremely fun. Also, you can get power bombs, but now they're technically optional. Your options from here are more or less to mess around, backtracking back to Brinstar and Norfair and everywhere else, or going straight to the final boss. Ridley's ship has a lot of unique parts, such as the entrance, glass bridge leading to Chozodia, and the cockpit. So, enjoy exploring these as well. This place really feels like it's the end of the game. It's overlooking the whole planet, as you can kind of like reflect through the glass on everything you've done so far. It feels like you're at the top, both like narratively and in progression. Anyways, time to fight the final boss, I guess. Man, can somebody drag that poor unoiled scrap heap over here so I can put it out of its misery? Oh, thanks guys. This is Mecha Ridley. It's very easy. Unless you're playing hard mode, in which case it's hell, but so are most bosses. How Mecha Ridley works is it gains higher health and attack power if you have 100% item completion, which can actually make him slightly hard if he can't aim. The issue is that if you have 100% items, then you also have 100% super missiles, and no doubling health and tripling damage output can save him from the sheer carnage at your disposal. Unless you're in hard mode, where item drops are halved and you miss a few missiles, in which case this fight is insanely hard. I really don't like how easy this fight is. It's barely a final boss. It's barely a boss at all. Think about how imposing and brutal the final bosses of your favorite video games are, and compare them to, like, this. The final boss is supposed to represent the apex of your skill being pushed to its absolute limits. You're fighting the culmination of everything this game has to offer, as the culmination of everything the game has taught you. If playing a video game is like climbing a mountain, then the final boss is the final stretch before the peak, which is the ending. Unless you're playing Metroid Zero Mission, where the final boss is less like scaling the final section of a mountain and more like getting to a certain point than walking up a hill. Anyways, the self-destruct timer goes off. Time to run away again. There's only one route open. I guess everyone in every other room can't access the escape route and must die because the doors are locked. Like, how are you supposed to escape if you're in any room, but the room's in this route, and the self-destruct timer goes off? Anyways, follow the route however you want to, because there are a couple ways to clear each of these rooms, depending on if you have power bombs or how you want to go through them anyways. Get to the escape pods and fight the actual final boss, 2 black space pirates. These two put up a severe fight, especially if you don't have the long beam. After that, we can commandeer one of these scorpion things and get the heck out of this planet, as Ridley's ship is razed with explosions. And that was Metroid Zero Mission. Overall, I absolutely adore the item collection and non-linear progression of this game, and think it's the best out of the entire series in that regard. Even better than Super Metroid. I think more people would rank this game higher than Super Metroid if the final boss actually felt like anything, because Mecha Ridley is nowhere near as strong or impactful as the Mother Brain fight in Super Metroid. It just simply cannot hold a candle to it, because it's so pathetic. The locales of Metroid Zero Mission are all diverse, unique, and memorable. From their motifs, gimmicks, to even their map design. It makes it easy to replay the game, and exciting to discover new things about progression or even hidden things stashed away from you that you may have missed in previous playthroughs. The controls and movement tech in Metroid Zero Mission are both excellent. The movement tech makes sense, the controls are fluid, and the techniques themselves are rather intuitive and easy to perform if you know the right setup for them. However, there is one issue with them, and that is space jump. If you do not have high jump boots, space jump is slow as hell. In fact, it is slower than wall jumping. Now, Super Metroid had a similar issue, and how you could get around that was you could either turn off space jump and just wall jump normally, or I think you can wall jump with space jump, but that might just be a project-based thing. I've been playing a lot of project-based as of lately. Or not gotten as early as you did in subsequent playthroughs. The last thing I'd like to talk about here is hard mode. Metroid Zero Mission's hard mode is unlocked after you pretty much master the game, which means beating it in under 1 hour in game time. This is pretty hard for a casual player and requires some serious routing, which thankfully is really open-ended because of how amazingly Metroid Zero Mission's progression can be. But how hard can this hard mode be? Well, seeing as you had to beat the game in under an hour in game time, quite hard. Enemies are buffed and you're given half health and half missiles. These two differences can turn the game from pretty easy into a living nightmare, especially in lower percent runs. Boss fights will drag on much longer, which forces you to get better at enduring their attack cycles, especially Ridley, who becomes quite possibly the hardest boss in the game in hard mode. Although, I do wish hard mode altered boss attack patterns like Castlevania Order of Ecclesia, where in its hard mode, bosses will have new attacks. That really spices up the game, and it can make bosses harder in more ways than just you have to fight them longer. Overall, Metroid Zero Mission is easily the best example of a non-linear Metroidvania, like, ever. There's no real contest. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Next video will probably be on, like, Castlevania Rondo of Blood, because that's another short one, and I have all the footage recorded already. Oh,